introduce yourself, your job, kind of what you entail, and maybe a little bit of how you got your job, or how you ended up there for a few minutes. And then after we go through the panel, y'all are welcome to ask questions, and hopefully they answer, and we'll wrap up a little bit after 11. If that works for everybody. So thanks so much, and thank you to our panelists. We'll start over here.
Okay. Hey everybody, I'm Beth Hicklin, and I graduated in May of '09. I graduated with communication studies and I minored in German. And I want to tell you a little bit about my job search and a little bit about what I'm doing, and I have 2 pieces of advice. First, the job search process went pretty well for me. I started in January of '09, took about 4 or 5 months. And I started June 19th of 2009. I only know that because it was my birthday. Ever. But I started the job search process, probably interviewed 10 to 12 places, and finally this one worked out. They contacted me. It was a place called Avenger Aircraft and Services, and it's where I'm working now. Love the company. I started out as operations manager, and it was a pretty tough first year because there was a lot of really tedious tasks like data entry and stuff like that, but it was unbelievable how much I learned during that first year about airplanes. I never thought I would learn so much about airplanes, but what we do is we're a structural engineering firm, and we also have a manufacturing shop. And basically, I started out making sure that the engineering firm stayed an engineering firm. I did all the day-to-day tasks to make sure that they got what they needed. Then about probably 9 months in, I got promoted to project manager, and I started dealing with vendors and customers, and making sure that 2 things happened. The budget stayed on task, and that the schedule and on-time delivery stayed on task. Those are the 2 things that my job mainly dealt with, which is a lot easier said than done. And then after that, probably about after a year and a half of being into that job, actually 3 weeks ago, I got promoted to director of programs and sales, which I'm really, really excited about. Still kind of transitioning, but basically I'll be doing a lot with Fed Biz Ops. There's like a bunch of military contracts that do stuff with airplane parts, and basically what we found a niche in is finding airplane parts that nobody makes anymore, and we make them for a nice little chunk of change. So a lot of people do well in the big production lines like Boeing and Drexel-Meyer and all those kind of companies, but we find a lot of profit because we're small. We do one-off parts, so that's kind of what we do. I have 2 pieces of advice, and they're both the same, but they have different meanings. Be patient during your job search process. I had 2 offers at one point, and something just didn't feel right about it. And so my parents said, stay patient, you're going to find something that you really love. And sure enough, a week later, I got the offer from Avenger Aircraft. And if I had taken one of the first offers, I would be sitting here talking to you about printers and not airplanes. So I'm really glad that I waited. And my second piece of advice is to also be patient during your, whenever you get your job. I remember 6 months in, I was on the verge of quitting because it was so boring, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I had this grand idea of being in the real world and how exciting it was going to be and all this stuff I was going to be doing, but you have to get in there and you have to put in a good first year. And so I recommend you put in your first year. I didn't even have to wait a full year. It was 9 months before I got promoted. So that's probably what I would say is put in that good first year, and I'm so excited for y'all that y'all are, I guess, all about to graduate, and it's a very cool time, and I have to say that there's not a cooler feeling than getting that first paycheck and being independent of your parents, so enjoy.
Good morning, my name is Justin Stokes, and I graduated in August of 2006. After I graduated, I took an internship with Governor Mark Sanford's re-election campaign down in Columbia, and I worked there. He was successfully re-elected. I went to work in his official office for 6 months, and then I had an opportunity to move to New York City, and I worked for Rudy Giuliani's presidential campaign for about a year until that ended. And then after that, I moved to Washington and bounced back between Washington and New York. I worked for a congressman from New York on his re-election campaign. And after that, I moved back to South Carolina. I worked for Congressman Gresham Barrett, who represented this area until last year. And then I moved back to DC, worked for another congressman from the Atlanta area. I served as his communications director and traveled back and forth between Georgia and Washington. And after that, I moved to upstate New York to manage a campaign for a guy running for Congress who's now a congressman, and I now serve as his chief of staff in Washington. And we have a staff of 20. He was just elected last November, so he took office in January. My advice would mirror what Beth said, and that is be patient. You know, there are a lot of times on every job, even the job that I have now, where you kind of want to quit, you want to throw your hands up, you want to give up, particularly on your first few jobs, because I think you're starting at the bottom, those are the most difficult. Sometimes you're tasked with things you don't really like, or what you think is not glamorous, or what you pictured the real world to be like. But if you work hard, you persevere, and you push through it, I think that will be noticed. And that's the one thing in my career, is that the hard work, dedication, loyalty is stuck out. When I worked for Governor Sanford as an intern at first of this campaign, there were 10 other interns that were in. We rotated in and out every day. And I didn't just come in the hours that they set for me. I came in all hours of the day. The night, I volunteered on the weekends because it was a campaign, it was really busy. But I did whatever they asked and never complained. And I was the only person that received a job after the campaign out of those 10 interns. So, you know, don't be afraid to do whatever it takes, because I think it does pay off in the end. And I'm glad to be back here today, and I really appreciate this department, what I've learned here, and I'm glad to be here with the other panelists today. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sallie McKenzie, and I graduated from Clemson in May of 2009. And I'm very fortunate to be back at Clemson working at the Brooks Center for the Performing Arts here on campus. If you haven't been there, you need to come. We have all kind of good stuff on, I promise. My title is Brooks Center Coordinator, and basically I'm the assistant to our director there. My job, I have a large umbrella of the tasks that I do. The main thing that I'm responsible for are probably 3 big things. I actually do the graphics. All the programs and playbills, if you ever go to a show there, any program you get, I've put that together for the shows that we bring in, for the student ensembles, even down to the little recitals. Also do graphics for some of our marketing stuff and some of our promotions. Also do event planning. We have a huge fundraising gala that I have a really big part in, and then I also plan lots of receptions and other activities for our donors. On top of that, a lot of donor relation activity. As you know, we're run basically on the money that is donated to us. So that's been very interesting. And then anything else that falls under my job description that they could think to give me. My second day on the job, I was in front of a crowd of 1,000 elementary school children doing bus dismissal, calling out bus numbers, and doing Boom Chicka Boom, and Simon Says on the mic on this stage at our child educational program. So really, every day is kind of a new day. My job, you never know what you're going to get into. How I got there was a very interesting, well, not that interesting, just very fortunate, I would say. I moved back home to Columbia, that's where I'm from, right after graduation, and lived with my parents for about 5 to 6 months. And if you know me, I'm very much a planner, so not having a plan was a very stressful thing, a time of anxiety. But I was very fortunate and blessed to have lots of great opportunities. I was constantly looking for jobs, interviewing for things, and in the time I had at home, I took a temporary marketing position at an adult continuing care facility near my home. Our neighbor was looking for somebody, it all worked out wonderfully, and that's something that I encourage you to do. If you don't have something right off the bat, do something temporary, do something part-time. I had my boss tell me that was something she really liked about my resume. I was doing something. I wasn't just sitting and biding my time waiting for the perfect thing. I was doing something. I was earning a little money that I saved, and that was great. By the time I got a real job and had to pay that first rent check and hadn't gotten my first paycheck yet. So that was great. So I definitely look to put your time somewhere while you're in that waiting period. And I agree about being patient, finding something that fit right for you. I was unsure of where I wanted to be location-wise. I thought Columbia, and then once I moved back, I decided I wanted to be somewhere a little different. And so I started looking at other places, and this job, I knew I didn't want to be quite in the business world. Not-for-profit was kind of more my thing. And so I just looked in those kind of areas, and I had never really thought about university, higher education, but I thought, well, I loved Clemson. I'd love to get back up in that area, and just checked the employee listings all the time, and that job came up and thought I'd throw my name in the hat, and that's what I did, so I'm glad to be here.
Hi y'all, my name is Darnell, and I work at a PR firm called Crawford Strategy right in downtown Greenville, South Carolina. I came to my job, I think, in a very unique way. I actually had a different job lined up before I graduated, started working there. I was at that job for 6 weeks, and I knew from day one that I was not gonna like it. It was not where I needed to be. It was a great salary, and it was a big company, and I thought it was gonna be so wonderful, and it wasn't. So I took a huge leap of faith and left my job without anything else lined up, and just started looking full-time for another job. The job I found now, and I say this because I think it's important to keep in mind that there was no job listing, there was no job posting. I actually applied to a firm that was no longer in existence. They had split, and they were a public relations firm going 2 separate ways. The partners, 2 had opened another one, and another had gone their own way, and they needed someone to help open up the firm. They needed someone to basically serve as an intern that was really an employee. So I went and interviewed there and got a job. And I found the firm by literally going to yellowpages.com and typing in public relations counselors in Greenville, South Carolina, and they came up. So it was kind of a very unique route to where I got where I am. Looking back, I'm so glad I did what I did. Kind of like Justin and Beth touched on, the first couple months were a little bit rough because there were 2 county executives there and 2 partners and myself. Actually, there's really 1 partner there, 4 of us. Now we have 12, so we've tripled in size, but there was no one to like run to Staples and get all the office supplies, or go to Publix and get water because if a client coming in for a meeting and there's nothing for them to drink. So I did a lot of that, a lot of data entry, a lot of very tedious things like Beth said, but something I read in a book once, I can't remember which book it was, but the person said, everything you do, you need to do well because people will notice. Whether you're answering the phones, whether you're leading a meeting, whether you're CEO of the company, everything you do it well and people will notice. Always go above and beyond, like Justin said, put in the extra time, put in the extra work. And also make sure that you really look into what the job entails. A lot of companies will send you descriptions that sound great and grand and wonderful. I thought in college I never wanted to be an event planner, it just wasn't my thing. And for 6 months, all I did was plan events for a major healthcare system. So I do a lot of that at my job. I do a lot of marketing, whether that be drafting a marketing campaign, executing it through radio, ads, events, press conferences, a ton of things. We also do a lot of media relations, graphic design as well. So we kind of have 3 departments where I work, where we all work together, but I mostly sit in the marketing department and do public relations and event planning. I'm also the internship coordinator. So if anyone wants an internship, please email me. Eddie Smith has all my info, and I always send stuff out over the listserv. But I try to make our internship program great, and I always have a little bit of bias for the Clemson students. So good luck, and if you have any questions, we're here. We're going to answer everything, I think, pretty candidly, even if the camera's wrong. So.
Hi, I am Leslie Farmer, and I am the Marketing Director for Meals on Wheels of Greenville. And I graduated in May of 2010, so I've been out for almost a year now. And I got this position because I had taken an internship my junior year at SE Tech, which is right where you are, right?
Yeah, I actually work at Avenger aircraft. I did meet the people over there, and they were quite nice.
And so I had my internship there in their management office and had that for 2 years. And as it was getting closer to graduation, I just started thinking, what am I going to do afterwards? And on their board is the executive director of Meals on Wheels. So she and I met and started talking, and she had seen some of my work that I had done for them. And so we just kind of hit it off, and then this position became available, and so I applied and interviewed, and I got it, and I started in August. So I haven't been there quite a year yet. My responsibilities include anything from media relations and handling everything that we send out through press releases or on the radio or advertisements. We have a donation system that we have to keep up, and so I kind of keep that moving and make sure people are allowed and are capable of making donations, whether it be through our website or coming into our office or any other way that they can imagine to give money. We also have about 2,000 volunteers that we use on a yearly basis, and it takes about 130 volunteers each day. So making sure that we keep them up to date on any changes that we have, on any nutritional programs that we may offer, is a big responsibility. So, I think just like everyone else has mentioned, it's a very big umbrella of things that you're, responsible for and that you're asked to do. But it's great. It's definitely very demanding and motivating, but you know, as long as you just sort of have the focus and the determination to do it, I think anything is possible in any job that you're offered. You know, we have so many different publics and arenas that we have to sort of market to, and being a nonprofit, we are very limited in the budget that we have for all of that, and so I have to always think of more creative ways, more innovative ways of how to get our message out there, because we can't necessarily pay to do that. So it takes a lot of creativity and a lot of thinking when you're outside of the office, and so you know, and just as a piece of advice, just always be aware that you know, your job just doesn't stop at 5 and you go home and you leave and you just don't ever think about it again until the next morning at 8. It's an ongoing process, and you learn something new every day, or at least I do, and you learn different ways to think about things and how to do things. I think that was probably one of the biggest surprises I had, is I thought, well, I've got this 4-year education and I've got a degree, so I'm going to go into a job and I'm going to know exactly what to do and how they want me to do it immediately. And that's just not the case at all. You just have to be really open to learning new things and being taught different things, and just always being prepared to handle anything they throw at you.
My name is Heather Pierce. I am the Communications Coordinator for the Make-A-Wish Foundation of South Carolina. My job is very similar to Leslie's in that I do most of our marketing, communications, PR. How I got to Make-A-Wish, I actually did an internship with them my final semester of college. I graduated May 2009. And they didn't have a position open for me then. I think everyone's dream is, oh, I'll do an internship, they'll offer me a job, and I'll just be all hunky-dory. Yeah. Not really the case ever at all. If it happens, you're very lucky, so feel very fortunate. But anyway, so this semester ended, I finished the internship, but I really liked the organization just because, I mean, hey, we're great, right? We do really cool stuff. So I went ahead, stuck around during the summer, helped with a few events that they had, not to mention it's just good experience and something that you can tell other employers and interviews that you're going on that you're helping to do, because they like to see your outside commitments and something else that you're doing and taking advantage of. And I was doing a completely different internship, marketing internship with a magazine in Greenville that summer because I couldn't find a job. And like someone said, even if you don't have a job, don't stay still. Be doing something, even if it's unpaid. Get a waitressing job on the side, do something, but something too that's very relevant to what you want to do as well, because I think the more wealth of knowledge that you have going into a position and that you can kind of let them know that you know about, the more they like it. It shows that you're a hard worker, shows that you have integrity, that you're, I guess, just motivated to do a good job. So what I do with Make-A-Wish is, like I said, a lot of what Leslie does, a lot of our marketing, PR, communications. Going back, so how I got the job, helped during the summer, and the guy that had my position before, luckily just happened to want to quit and go in another direction, so I was around and got his job. It doesn't always work out that way, so I do feel very fortunate for that. But how he had the position structured whenever I came in was chaotic, and I'm a very type A person, so I like to have things, in what I think is an organized structure. Kind of came in, revamped the whole position pretty much. I started doing, press releases, media alerts, helping with press conferences, helping with marketing, any kind of promotions we were having, events, that kind of stuff, getting the word out there. It slowly turned into helping with cause marketing, which is kind of more going on to the development side. Even though I did not want to do fundraising and go out and ask people for money, I kind of did it subsequently, and just, marketing and business development run so parallel, and I think people overlook that a lot of times, and you feel undervalued, like, oh, well, you're just marketing. I mean, you're just all about looking pretty and getting our name out there. That's not true at all. We bring in a lot of money because we craft the message that goes out to the public, and we're the ones picking which public we want to target and all that. So don't let anybody tell you that that's undervalued, because it's not. It's very, very important. But now I'm kind of figuring out. I'll be there in October. 2 years will be full-time. So I feel like now that I've had a year and almost 2 years, that I've really got a good grasp on it. And it takes that long to actually get into a position because you need to see it full circle, see how everything happens, and then that way you can put your spin on it and know, all right, what worked well, what didn't work well, what do I think we could do differently, is there something else that we can build off of, kind of that stuff. So now, almost being there for 2 years, I finally feel like I've got it, and actually in August will be official. I will be promoted to Director of Marketing, so I'll really be taking on a lot more, which actually I'm kind of already doing it now. It's just finally putting the title on it and getting compensated for it. But with a nonprofit, it's just how it goes. You know, you wear a lot of hats. You don't have a big budget to hire all these people to do things. You are every department in there. There's not somebody else that you pass it off to. Which actually that's a good thing because you learn a lot. You learn how to do time management because you have so many tasks that you have to do, and it's very demanding. But it's kind of fun, and especially if you like a challenge and you want to be great at everything you do, and if your name's on it, you don't want someone to be like, oh, well, she didn't do too good on that. I mean, you want to put a good spin on things. So I liked having the extra responsibility, and I think taking on more responsibility than your job title tells you to is also the way that you get promoted as well, because you can be stuck in one little position. I was going to apply for a job in Charlotte that was doing their website, their blog, their social media things. I didn't want to just do that. I wanted to, get in there and get my hands dirty. So I think asking for more responsibility, which you have to ask for, is a very good thing to do. That's just one piece of advice. And just to not feel undervalued, be confident in your capabilities and what you can bring to the table. And I think if you do that, and ask questions, don't pretend that you know something because they're going to find out if you lied about it. Ask questions, be straightforward. I think people appreciate that and show that you are loyal, that you want to do a good job, and that you'll probably stick around for a while and hopefully get bumped up pretty quickly. So.
Cool. We can open up to questions if anyone has one. If y'all don't mind, I'd love to start with a question. It's a complete bias from the classes I teach, but I'm interested to know is how much you use social media in your jobs and what kind of knowledge of social media you expect from people who would be starting with your companies. Like, do you look for someone who's blogging on Twitter, or is that a negative? And have you had to learn that on the job? I'm just kind of curious about how that's working, especially profit politics and nonprofit, just kind of the different role it takes would be really interesting to me.
Well, you probably do a ton of it. Yeah, go for it.
I think one thing that's important about social media is that it's not, and my job's a little bit different because I have like 6 different clients I'm working on at once as opposed to just one organization. So I'll have like a hospital, a school, a lawyer, a politician, and dermatologist, and they all have very different needs, and sometimes social media makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. And I think also if you're doing their social media, you have to make sure that you are very educated in that field, because if you're not, people will pick up on it very quickly. Like if I were to put a blog post, something about Skin Cancer Awareness Month that was completely off or just surface level, no one's going to look at that, no one's going to value it because it's not relevant at all to the people who are trying to gain that kind of information. I do think that social media is kind of a given now, to where if you don't have social media, people notice, but they might not notice that you have it, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of like with the package deal of marketing and public relations now, I think in most instances, not all, I think, if it's not appropriate, don't use it because it's a waste of your time. But something else that I read an article yesterday, I think it was in the New York Times, about how when people are looking for jobs and if they look at your like your blog and your Facebook and your Twitter, if you're using it incessantly for random things, they're going to think that all you ever do is get on social media and you won't work. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well, that people can also always find your personal social media, always. When an intern applies, the first thing I do is look at their Twitter, Facebook, and see if they have a blog to see what they have going on and see what their writing style is as well. Sarah's intern of ours, and I did that with her when she applied. I looked at all of her social media right away.
Would it be bad if you'd not found any? If they didn't have a blog or
It wouldn't
Twitter?
have been bad, but it was also something that was one of Sarah's big highlights in her interview, was her social media capability. So I definitely need to look for it, and I always ask for interns if they're familiar with social media, because that is a very up-and-coming thing that is huge, and everyone wants it. And It's also important to be well educated on the different venues you can use for that and the different kind of like Twitter coupons. That's a big thing right now that people are doing, to where if you print out this link in a tweet and bring it in, you get a coupon, for a lot of people. So that's something people are doing as well. They're doing so much with social media. But I just think if you're gonna do it, go all out. If you're not going to, don't do it halfway, because people will notice that as well and stop coming back to your whatever social media campaign you're trying to run. But I think it's important if it's appropriate for the client.
So like from my point of view, I feel like it's a little bit different just because of the industry they're in. The aircraft industry is so strange in that it's all who you know. I mean, they don't look at websites, they don't look at blogs or anything like that. It's all about who they worked, back at Gulfstream 20 years ago. Are they still working? So it's a little different. I have made a big push. The website looked like it was made by dinosaurs, and so we did redo that. I helped redo that website, and then I also got them to start posting if they do any type of papers, or if they go to any conferences and publish anything. I've gotten them. I really want people to find our website as a resource for the cutting edge, leading engineering solutions, because we have some of the most brilliant minds in the Southeast, and I said y'all need to take advantage of that and let people know that that is a resource that they can use. And when they start hearing Avenger Aircraft publishes ... then they'll look at our website and say, hey, they also engineer. So that's how I mainly work with that. We go to these conferences every year, and it's literally almost the only marketing we do. And you just get together and you go to all these events and meet people, and that's basically how we market, is through these 2 conferences that we go to every year, and it's somehow enough to keep our company going. So
well, I'm just thinking that when I graduated from Clemson, Facebook was still only allowing college students to be users. So that shows that I'm getting older. But social media is a huge part of politics, and for political campaigns, for so many years, newspaper advertising, communicating to newspapers, press releases, press conferences, trying to be on the local news, or having commercials on television stations was sort of how these campaigns run. And I can even see from working in 2006 and then 2008, 2007, 2008, how social media has taken a bigger role in politics and in campaigns, in communicating your message to your supporters. It's an instant way to get information out there. One thing that we do in our office right now is, my boss is really big on transparency and being very open about what's going on in our office. He publishes his schedule online. We post on Twitter, so we have thousands of followers on Twitter. We post our schedule on Facebook. We post an explanation of every vote that we take in Congress on there, and we've gotten a lot of media coverage because we're one of 2 congressmen who has chosen to do that, and we've got a lot of really positive coverage back home. And it's something that he's using in speeches. We gave several speeches earlier this week, and it was something he mentioned, that in an effort to communicate to people what he's doing and why he's doing it and explaining it, he's taking it to social media. And at times I find that we use social media more than we do press releases. And we have a lot of reporters in our district who are also on Twitter. They follow us. We've done neat things like when I worked for Gresham Barrett, we did with WSPA out of Spartanburg. Her name escapes me, one of the reporters there. We did a Twitter interview where she would tweet a question, we would tweet an answer. And I mean, it was tough because you're having to get it in so few words. But I think you can do interesting things like that and increase your followers. You can drive turnout to events. When we do town halls, we post that online. A lot of people see that online. So I think it's a great way. I think it can also get you in trouble if you're not careful. And in politics also, a lot of reporters, particularly national reporters, they use it to reveal things. I think you see a lot, like with the Obama administration and other politicians, when they have news, a lot of times they'll tweet it. So, I have a personal Twitter account. I don't really tweet, but I do follow a lot of reporters and a lot of newsmakers and a lot of politicians like Sarah Palin and those types, because a lot of times they release news first through that way. So I think that shows sort of the power that social media is taking on in our world. I read an interesting study where it said that they did a study on politicians or candidates last fall, and those that won, if you had more followers on Facebook, you were more likely to win your election. Whether there's a correlation there, I don't know, but I think there is something, it does show the life of the campaign, and like you said, don't do it halfway, because you do have a lot of politicians, they have these accounts and they don't do a lot, and it creates this impression, if you're following them, that there's not a lot going on. And I think that can be said for any sort of organization using that.
Did you learn it on the job?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, in the campaign that I ran in 2008, we didn't use Twitter, and we had a Facebook account, and we never used it. And now it's daily. We have a press secretary. She sends around for approval tweets, postings from Facebook. I mean, we're constantly using that. So.
Well, and I think the key to it is you don't be afraid to adjust your marketing strategies. You need to be specific to the audience you're trying to reach. Like, I know the Brooks Center is a very interesting place with our strategies, because the main group that we attract are a lot of retirees in the area. They are our solid patrons who come to every single show. And so to get them to know what's going on, we'll still do a postcard campaign, and we'll still send out, it's called Expression, and it's like a little magazine that we do 4 times a year. I help put that together. So I know those are the things that work for those people. Some of the people that come to Brooks Center don't have an email account. So you have to know your audience. But a big thing we want to do is get more students in that building. I bet if I asked a lot of y'all, some of y'all may have never stepped foot in there other than orientation. But we have a lot of amazing things going on and great student prices. So we're right now trying to figure out how to get that message out there. Glenn here is our marketing director, and he has us a Facebook page, and that's going great, and he's doing more, but we've just decided to jump on the Twitter bandwagon and just to see how that works out and get that going, because we know we want to get more students in. So this is a skill that we've seen. I mean, you're going to have to know it, I think, from now on out, because everybody's moving towards internet communication. So be very, very glad and fortunate that you are getting that education here, because I think that's going to be something that sets you apart, because you may have the ability to get a whole new audience to your company or to your place you're working for, because you are able to target that market with that type of campaign.
I would say from a nonprofit's viewpoint, social media is such a great way to reach many different people, for those with high budgets, low budgets, anywhere in between. And it is accessible to many different people, and definitely for the initiatives and campaigns that you're running. We have a lot of our volunteers, and certainly a lot of our clients are retirees, and they, like Sallie was saying, don't have an email address and have no sort of comprehension of what exactly we're doing on social media. But that is, certainly a big initiative of mine, is how do we get younger people involved? How do we get the young professionals involved? How do we get our businesses and our community involved with our mission? And so we are on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And so those are a big part of my responsibilities each day, is just to manage those and make sure that we have a presence, because things are going to be said about you and your organization regardless, but it's always better to be a part of that conversation and to sort of steer it in the direction where it needs to go, and where you're not just sort of behind the scenes and you have no idea of what people are necessarily saying about you or your company on those social media sites. And that's just a great way to get everyone back to your website, where there's more information to be found. It's a great way to give them really quick and easy snapshots of what activity you have going on, especially for events. We find that some of our biggest supporters and contributors and attendees of our events come to us from our social media sites. So it's huge in that respect, just to be present and to understand the conversation that is going on about you anyway.
And I'll say, I know that everyone Facebooks and does Twitter and all that stuff now. Whenever you go into a professional setting, though, almost quite different from how you use it personally. You have to adapt the messages that you're putting out there, adapt who you're trying to hit up on the sites and whatnot, and going back to driving things to the website. You don't want to do information overload on those small scale messages that you can send out. Put a link, drive them to where there's more information. Plus, no one wants to read a paragraph long thing on Facebook about whatever event you're doing. Just drive them somewhere else. Plus, it gets them to the website where for nonprofits you have to donate today, and maybe they will, and that kind of thing. But just remember that it is different, and you'll have to adapt your style depending on what industry you're in, what position you're in, and just the company overall, what the mission is, what you do, that kind of thing. So even though you may be on Twitter 12 hours a day or Facebook or whatnot and never turn it off, just the way that you're doing it may not be exactly, may not carry you through. So be willing to make a style change in that. You can always have your personal time on there, but as far as whenever it comes to professionalism, you have to be a little more professional and not quite so candid and I guess relax. It is a business, so even though you still want to seem very personable with everyone, you still want to be sure that you sound educated as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say about that, I think it's getting harder because with Twitter, it's such, you write a quick sentence or you text somebody and you can use abbreviations and all these kind of things. And it's you see more and more people slipping into that same way in their professional communication. Take the extra minute to spell check. Read that sentence to yourself over and over again. Read what you put on Facebook, because it makes such a difference in how people view you. If you put something out there that's riddled with spelling errors just because you were trying to get it out there quick, that does not reflect positively on you. So really be careful, just even with the little things grammatical, just be very aware of what you're putting out there.
And just one other thing, it's such a great learning tool. You can always go see, what people in your industry are doing with it and get new ideas and new ways. And then you can sort of tailor your marketing plan or your marketing campaign and say, well, this seems to really work for them, and it drives, different people to their certain events. And so I think it's opened a very good venue of how you can learn what other people are doing in your industry. And you can also sort of check on maybe what a competitor is doing, or exactly how they are managing their marketing styles.
I have a question. What advice would you give for going into interviews with people? That's like one thing that I struggle with the most, because it's kind of like, that's the last thing before I get offered a job or something like that, so you get really tense. But what were some advice that y'all had coming into interviews?
I guess I'll go first. I would say, I know that you probably have your little questions prepared and you have your answer for whatever they're going to throw at you, but I think if you go in, and I did this that you go in and say, tell me what happens here day to day, and kind of listen to them. Let them do a lot of talking. It's good to do that. But and plus you can feed off of what they're asking you. But ask them what happens in the company day to day. You should already know the basic background information before you go to the interview, just from doing your good research like you should do. But ask them what they do day to day. Ask them what your position does day to day, what other people that have been there before, or if it's another position and there's several others. See what they do, and kind of feed off of that to say, well, I could be really good at this. Oh, I'm very interested in that. That's something that I want to learn a lot about and whatnot. And just kind of let them almost steer the conversation instead of you saying, oh, well, I knew how to do this and do that. Apply it to the job, because I think if they hear you say, ooh, well, they could do this in this position, and that would really change things up for us, I think they'll like to hear that more than just rattling off other stuff that you have done.
I think before the interview process is also extremely important. Your resume, your cover letter, work so hard on that. I had 5 or 6 months where I didn't have a full-time job, so a lot of that time was making sure I had that about as correct and good-looking as I could get it. I know my cover letters, I very much worked on tailoring it very specifically to the job I was applying for. I didn't just have a general cover letter that I shot out with any application. I I tailored it. It showed that I'd taken the time to do my research, looked at what I was gonna be doing. I definitely think whenever you're in there, be yourself and be honest, because if you go in and you're trying to act like who you think they want to hire, you may end up in a job that you are not fit for. So if you're yourself and it doesn't work out, it's probably for the best. It might not have been the best fit for you. And so just be honest. If you don't know something, be honest. Like she said, say, I'm excited to learn it. I know in this position, I had a phone interview first, heard about a part of the job or a skill I wasn't quite as familiar with. I had an interview in Clemson about a week later. In that week's time, I got on the internet, I got with a friend who knew more about that skill, got them to tell me about it. So by the time I went into that interview, I could say, I know we talked about this on the phone and I don't have as much background, but I've already done this, this, and this to try to learn more about it. So you come in prepared, letting them know that you're willing to work, you're willing to learn, because everybody doesn't know everything. And so you need to be a sponge whenever you're in a new position. And I think if you come in with that attitude and that excitement, that'll really go a long way. And be very careful about what you wear. Physical presentation is so important. Be professional, be conservative. Show that you're going to be able to mix well in the company, not cause any ripples by coming in with a very flashy outfit. Just go and be yourself, but also be very professional.
I think also little things go a very long way in interviews. I think not saying yeah or looking down on the ground. You know, when you go to an interview, if anyone comes there, and if you're a female, still stand up, no matter who it is that comes into an interview. Have a firm handshake, look them in the eye. I know looking people in the eye sometimes is awkward because you feel like they can see into the depths of your soul. But they can't. And I think also your interview, especially in a field like communications, you do a lot of interacting with professional people, and they're going to look at your interview as sort of a test run for that, of how you interact with professionals and how you answer questions and how honest you are and how you present yourself. I think something else to keep in mind after the interview is don't follow up and beat a dead horse, because it's a very small world and a lot of people will at some point be turned off by that. You can follow up too much. And if you don't hear back from them, that's poor etiquette on their part, and move on because you don't want to work for them anyway. So I think the little things definitely go a long way. Small things like etiquette and, like Sallie said, dressing appropriately, borderline on conservative versus flashy. Have good questions, and do not ask salary questions on the first interview at all. Do not ask compensation questions or what's vacation policy like or things like that, because it makes it seem that your priority is the extra bells and whistles and not the job. And also, don't lie, like Sallie said. Don't lie about a position you had. Don't lie about something you did. Do not even elaborate it, because they might assume you know how to do something, and your second day they might give you a press conference because you said you executed a press conference when you really didn't. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Don't set an expectation that you can't meet, because it's better to be open and honest with what your abilities are than to lie to make it sound good, and then you get in there and it's going to turn out a lot worse than saying you can do something and you can't, than saying you can't, like Sallie said, and that you're willing to learn.
And I would just add to, after the interview, a handwritten thank you note goes such a long way. I would never recommend just to shoot someone an email and say, thanks for the interview. And you want to, in that thank you letter, you want to handwrite it, you want to make sure you're addressing it to the correct and appropriate person. Don't just put a generic mailing address and hope it just ends up in the lap of the person you interviewed with. And pull something from the conversation that you had with them to include in that. Because that not only shows that you are listening and you are being thoughtful, but that you actually understand what it is that they were telling you. So, say, thanks so much for the interview. It was a pleasure meeting you. I really enjoyed our conversation about, and I feel like I could learn more from this particular example. I think that shows definitely a huge interest that you have in their company and that you're willing to take the time, other than to send them a tweet or a Facebook message or go on their website to their generic,
Post on their Facebook wall.
Yeah.
Love the interview yesterday.
Yeah, wonderful. You definitely want to show that you're sincere and that you're very grateful for the time that they took to be with you.
I'll be really short. My biggest thing was just to convey passion. And it might go a little bit against what you had, but for all the interviews, I was so excited to be there. They had never seen anyone so excited to be in an interview, and after, going through a couple of them and hearing feedback from them, the reason I got the job I did is because they said everybody else was just there for an interview, but we could tell that you were here for that job. You wanted this particular job, even though, I told them I've had a good number of interviews this week, but nothing, makes me more excited about the thought of working for Avenger aircraft. And whether or not, the phrase "fake it till you make it" comes to mind. I mean, if you get the job offer, you can always turn it down. But like you said, you gotta really think about it at somewhere where you're actually gonna be excited to be. But that was my thing, is to be smiling ear to ear and just be a pleasure to be around, and make a personal connection with the person you're interviewing with. Like talk business, and then ask them how they came to Greenville. Do they like it here? And I'm excited. I think this would be a great, make a personal connection. So.
The field that I'm in, a lot of it is based on networking and connections, because these campaign jobs in politics and public service often aren't posted. It's sort of who you know and the reputation you gain. So I would say that before your first interview, and even once you get your first job, is to do a lot of networking with professionals in your field or in the field that you want to be in. I think they provide a lot of great advice prior to an interview. Like you mentioned, it's great to talk to people who had that job or similar jobs to get their perspective. I think it gives you a lot of material to discuss and know what sort of questions to ask and what you're walking into. But I think networking is it's great and it's important, and you can start it. As several people have mentioned, if you have downtime, you don't have a job, go get an internship or join some sort of professional organization in a community and get involved, because you never know what sort of opportunities will come your way. And the other thing is, and I think it's important for this department because we're all communicators, and that's what we study here. My current boss, he is before he ran for office, he was he owned a large construction company, he's an engineer. And so he and I said in the interviews, because we had to fill positions within our office, and he looked at things very differently in that, I looked at a resume or I looked at a cover letter and I saw people who paid attention to details. If someone sent me a cover letter that said "to whom it may concern," that went in the garbage, because it told me that they didn't take the time to figure out who they were meeting with or what office they were meeting with. And so I think if you take the time to make your cover letter or your writing sample fit whatever you're working on, if you spend time on your resume, if you come into an interview and you're professional and you do all of these things that we mentioned, it makes a lot of difference. At least it did for me. He would look at a resume and say, "Oh, they went to Harvard, great." What I said is, are they able to communicate? Are they going to fit into this organization? Because everything everyone in our office does is really in public service and dealing with people. And so I looked at things differently. So I think that's important if you're all going into a communications related field or something that's going to use that, is definitely pay attention to details.
Another quick resume thing. Always send it as in your colors of PDF, because sometimes formatting doesn't transfer across all computers. And if I get a docx and it doesn't open my computer, I'm not going to take the time to email that person back and say, "Hey, can you send me the new format here?" Because it's showing up as gibberish. A lot of people don't have time for that. Always send it as a PDF because the formatting remains the same. It doesn't shift and do weird things. Also, sometimes if you open up in a Word document, I got one the other day and I could tell that there was a mail merge where they had merged my name into the cover letter, and I was just like, "What? You had to have seen this before you sent it to me." So always send it as a PDF. Also, do not save your resume as resume number 12, exclamation point, or resume for the Greenville Hospital System job, and then you accidentally send it to St. Francis Hospital. Save it as Sarah McGee resume, things like that. Don't save it as some crazy thing, because people will see that when it gets sent in. Even if you submit it to a website, you see you get the original document. It doesn't auto-populate into, some do, but ours, you see the original document. So that's important as well, just to know that. That's the first impression people have of you if they don't know you beforehand. If it wasn't a networking type thing, your resume is your first impression out the interview. So
Got small details too.
yeah, that's always be careful about that
And
kind of
have
stuff.
a professional email address that they can email you
Yes.
back.
Yes.
Don't let it be hotmama7. You want it to be very clean and simple and something that they can easily say, oh, sarah.mcgee@gmail.com. You know, it's nothing too crazy or over the top.
Great, unfortunately, we're about out of time. I'm sure if any of y'all have follow-up questions, in the next 10 minutes, we're just gonna be switching over to the scholarship panel. So feel free to come chat with our lovely presenters up here and help me in thanking them.